Tom Clancy is a prolific writer whose works extend basically endlessly. Almost all of them stories of spies and terrorists, very often flagrant anti-Irish propaganda. Tom Clancy really hates the Irish. Movies like The Hunt for the Red October, Patriot Games, Jack Ryan, games like Splinter Cell, Ghost Recon, The Division. He's basically shoved his hands in anything military and spy themed not named James Bond. He's in fact so prolific that even dying in 2013 hasn't stopped him from releasing books, movies, and games, just endlessly chugging along, usually multiple a year. Rainbow Six is a shockingly long branch of the Tom Clancy brand. The first one was an extremely early attempt at making a tactical shooter in a time where the idea was basically non-existent, and was released in 1998, but was also on the N64 and PlayStation a year later, and the series is still running with the popular Rainbow Six Siege today. In 2008, Rainbow Six's hot new game was Rainbow Six Vegas 2 on the Xbox 360, backwards compatible on the newer Xboxes, PS3, and PC, and like all Tom Clancy games, was developed by Ubisoft, specifically their Montreal branch, who works frequently on the Tom Clancy games, Watch Dogs, Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, all the shooty, westerny action type games. Rainbow Six Vegas 2 separates itself from the popular games of the era in a series of small tactical elements and a focus on realism. Despite also trying to look real and tell military stories, Call of Duty is more like an action movie and is fairly arcadey and fast-paced, and pretty much everything in the era was trying to be that. Vegas 2 has very low time to kill, going both directions, has you extremely outnumbered, and usually asks you to plan ahead with the tools you have, like door charges and C4 to blow up enemies without them noticing, and utilizing your AI allies, having them throw grenades, provide covering fire, open doors for you. It's also a damn good co-op game, as the variety of weapons and utility tools allows for some interesting asymmetry. My friend Grant played long range with an assault rifle and a sniper, covering my approaches with my mid-range sieging kit of door charges, an LMG, and a shotgun. Callouts and covering fire are fun in the game's generally broad areas, although this game doesn't generally require the coordination that later games in the tactical shooter genre would. There isn't really a lot of flash nor gimmicks. Vegas 2 doesn't have vehicle segments, it doesn't limit what weapons you can bring into a level, there's no giant cutscenes, there's no gimmicky weapons like rocket launchers. Terrorists take over most of Las Vegas, go to a cool location that works well for room clearing and maybe a medium-sized set piece. It's simple and sweet, but nearly every room is designed to have multiple layers and entrances to them to facilitate the game being, tactical. Guns feel great. They could probably use a bit of unsteady aiming, like Resident Evil 4 or something, but they make impressively real-sounding noises, they have impressive power. I mean, the LMG just completely shreds enemies, and the shotgun has a decent range, unlike most video game shotguns. And up close, the shotgun is basically a one-shot, one-kill, maybe two if you're good. It feels great. There's even some neat realism in terrain and even walls, not to mention people, having the potential to be pierced by certain stronger weapons, allowing you to tactically shoot through walls and into crowds, which adds an extra layer to tracking enemies and laying traps. The game has a very deliberate pace to it. Pretty much every room is a risk, you die really fast, and you're strongly encouraged to snake cam through doors, get the drop on enemies, or even play it as a light stealth game in certain areas, not to mention utilizing allies. It's not a twitchy arcade shooter, it's a light step into tactics shooters with a very modern feel, and I absolutely love it. One of the few truly unique mechanics in the game is rappelling, which is usually used as a shortcut to go down, but does give some neat angles to approach rooms from time to time, usually upside down through a window, which makes the enemy AI freak out a little bit. Not a situation they handle very well. The enemy AI in general isn't that strong though. They rarely attempt to flank and often just hold position until alerted, and even then they tend to hunker down in place. Your allies aren't a ton better and tend to lag behind and get lost without a lot of orders to keep them moving, and they can also body block you, which is fairly annoying in the more cramped areas. With some wrangling, they can also be useful assets. The game features a very elaborate leveling system too that I should probably talk about. It kind of reminds me of the Elder Scrolls one. It extends through every mode in the game, with general experience being awarded for doing anything, with more being awarded depending on your range and headshots and other things like that. And there are also 3 types of sub-experience. Marksman for long-range kills, assault for explosives and mid-range kills, and close quarters for shotguns and the like. And progressing on these trees unlocks better guns in those areas, customization options, armor, and even a riot shield. The system itself is pretty background, but does seem to be very grindy, with a story mode playthrough and co-op landing you at around level 10 at the end of it. out of 100. Although any reward beyond level 60 is just extra experience. Still, it is cool that you constantly have neat little things to look forward to getting, and I love that in the story you can just steal better locked weapons that you wouldn't normally have access to, and add attachments like scopes to them at resupply points, and just take them with you for the rest of the game, which adds a neat dynamic by bypassing the grind entirely, at least to some extent. The game also offers 2 additional modes. Terrorist Hunt is a fairly basic horde mode. Most maps are remixes of maps from the main game, truncated slightly for size, and offer more of the same great gameplay in a little high score style package. These maps are also, I believe, the same ones that were used in multiplayer, which had a variety of basic shooter modes, and there was also some DLC maps that seem to have been taken from the first game, I believe, although I haven't played it, that for some reason I own. I don't know if they're free with the digital version on Xbox One, or if they're given away at some point, or maybe they were always given away. I don't know, I probably should have looked into that. Yeah, the online has been offline for a couple years now, so it's not really possible to play that aspect, although I do think that Terrorist Hunt is a nice mode. While I'm not the biggest fan of horde modes in general, at least not typically, I do think the game is fun enough and gives you enough options with all the gadgets and weapons that you can kind of squeeze a good bit of fun out of the fairly limited roster of maps. Rainbow Six Vegas 2 holds up fairly well visually, I think. I think its fairly narrow focus helps. It's definitely a 6th gen game, the rough edges, especially on the faces, definitely show, but the environments are very solid. The Las Vegas skyline, a place I know well and love in its own way, is very detailed and visible through most levels. It's pretty apparent where the geometry ends and the skybox starts, but I think it sells the Vegas experience well, and since you spend almost the entirety of the game in Vegas, you get to see it at different times of day, you get to see it from different angles at different heights. It's very cool. There's only 7 levels, although each is split into a few sub-chapters, and they have a great variety for primarily being based in one broad location. I absolutely love the neon junkyard of old casino and restaurant signs. There's the MLG convention, which is an odd blast from the past. The world's most elaborate and sprawling gym with unique and fun little areas like rappellable rock climbing walls. You get good blends of indoor and outdoor and cramped and broad areas, and the game takes place mostly across the span of a day, so the ever-changing lighting keeps things fresh as well. The darkness also gets real dark, especially for the time, forcing you to rely on the more awkward night vision options, which is fantastic, and is a nice little twist on the gameplay in a game that doesn't twist it up very much. It is notable, if unsurprising, that split screen does a pretty good number on the texture quality. Signs are blurry to the point of unreadability, and everything just looks slightly more 5th gen. Although the guns and their sound effects still look pretty damn good since they're the central focus. The music in this game, it exists. It's the kind of military movie spy thriller thing you would expect, but it's frankly so subtle and the game is so often just like a chaotic mess of noise between all the gunshots and the doors exploding that it never really gets a chance to stand out. I frankly didn't notice it, and listening to it on its own doesn't really change that. It's not that it's badly constructed music. I think it's fairly decent for what it is and what it's trying to accomplish, just that it's definitely a background element and not a focus. Frankly speaking, levels are kinda hard to evaluate. Despite the trends of the time, there isn't an immense amount of story in this game. The opening level, oh god, Pic des Pyrénées, is a flashback to 2005, taking place on the mountains between France and Spain, and covers most of the story of the game until the very last chapter. The initial operation is a bit of a blunder, as Nowak, one of your squad mates, gets the hostage killed and gets injured on the job. The level is very tutorial heavy, but the gameplay is good, and the game's simple and strong core is present in every level, pretty much unchanged. The snowy mountaintops offer a very different vibe from the later levels in a nice way, but maybe placing the flashback later would have had more impact on that change, since there is a lot of desert coming up. The game immediately picks back up in 2010. Mexican terrorists have smuggled chemical weapons over the border and are planning to detonate them in Vegas. Everything up to the very last level is running around Vegas looking for the bombs, getting sidetracked to rescue hostages, failing sometimes, and tracking down the terrorists for more information to continue doing the former 2 things. There are things going on, and set pieces, and some interesting moments, like intentionally detonating one of the bombs in a remote area to minimize its risk, but there isn't a whole lot of revelation on what's actually going on until the very end. The gameplay kinda just unflinchingly rolls along the whole time, always fantastic, but never changing. Old Vegas has some rooftops which offer a lot of space and cramped nightclubs and garages. It's not at all an uninteresting level, but in a broad sense it's a collection of places to do the gameplay in its most basic form. The rec center is a gigantic gym, it starts with a cool explosion, and the gym offers some interesting little spots, the climbing walls especially, and the library is an especially good arena with its multi-layered floor plan and endless cover. The neon graveyard, apparently a real place, is one of the coolest looking spots in the game, and the chase through the backyards and the need to not kill the suspect are interesting little twists on the gameplay, and the junkyard's odd structure and the gaps between all the lumps of garbage give interesting little bits of line of sight play. The convention center is loaded with relics of the past, the MLG signs, absolute walls of CRT TVs, presumably for like Counter-Strike, Rainbow Six Vegas 2. These walls are incredibly fucking tall. I've never seen anything like it, but I guess you kind of need to limit line of sight in an area this broad, otherwise snipers kind of just become the meta. The failure to save the hostages from the chemical weapon and the detonation of the Montreal bomb are both cool stingers, but again, the game is shining in these interesting areas without much switch up to what you're doing. The Chinese theater starts with the penthouses, which are great shotgun levels with some fun verticality and rappelling to lower levels, and the Chinese theater itself is gorgeous and interesting, with a few standoff type encounters with you in the open, and it's just a quality locale for the game to be what it is. The oil refinery and train yard are the only Vegas locations to kind of be a mix-up. It's an extremely dark level with lots of layers that aren't easily accessible outside of very slow ladders. It plays a bit more like a stealth level where getting the jump on enemies is extremely important with the amount of snipers. That is if you care to use a suppressor instead of like an LMG. It's also not very visually interesting relatively, as it's largely just factories and stuff, but it's another quality level to play through with its little changes to the formula. But you kind of see what I mean, right? Like every level in this game, you're kind of doing the same thing. The big twist is that Nowak was behind it all. He was just really ass-hurt about getting injured on the job, and gloats about injuring your guy during the raid on his villa, which is in Costa Rica. That one's not in Vegas. Hey buddy, you know we got you on your feet in like 2 seconds, right? And the guy you injured, like, it's not that big a deal, man. It's one of those Tom Clancy things that doesn't really land here with the traitor and all that big elaborate plots. The villa is probably the most iconic part of this game, though. The best terrorist hunt map and a very fun level all around. You get a little bit of everything. There's pools, there's the house interior, which is multi-layered in its own right and has a lot of stairs and tight corners. The garage, which leads into a big garden. It does the thing so well, and it's very different than Vegas, which is mostly done on like skyscrapers or in gaudy casinos that are much more broad and less compact. Also, it has a boss fight for some reason. That used to be like a mandatory thing in games where every game had to have a boss fight regardless of how little sense it made. In this case, it's against a helicopter. It's not the worst thing ever. You hide behind cover and you just keep shooting it until it eventually dies, and if it shoots missiles, you just run backwards and repeats. It feels really out of place. It really didn't need to be here. It adds nothing to the game. And with that, Nowak is killed and the day is saved. Credits roll. That's it. Beautiful. As may be obvious, Rainbow Six Vegas 2 is very good. That goodness just being in the form of pure raw gameplay and a few fun settings along the way. The game never feels the need to mix things up, add gimmicks, or be anything outside of a satisfying and fun tactical shooter. The game would probably be good if every level took place in a warehouse, but the neon graveyard and library certainly don't hurt it. The plot is pretty thin, the leveling system is grindy, the online is gone, but it's damn good anyway. Especially in co-op where the act of planning and pulling off room sweeps in a clean way becomes even more satisfying. It looks pretty nice for its time, Terrorist Hunt adds a pretty much infinitely replayable element to it, and the guns look and sound fantastic. It's the perfect medium-sized playground to explore new routes, new weapons, new approaches, and gives a surplus of fun toys to mess around with. I don't have particularly deep or even necessarily interesting thoughts on the game, but I had a damn good time playing it, especially in co-op.